I'm Maxine Fothergill from Amax Estates and Property Services in Gravesend. We specialise in sales, lettings and block management, and we're open for business. To find out more about us, please visit our website on www.amaxestates.com. So hi, I am joined today with Nick Tad. Nick has got a really interesting story that I want him to be able to share with you. He is doing some absolutely amazing work for animals that are out in Ukraine. It's quite heartbreaking, to be totally honest with you, but I'm going to ask Nick to be able to give you his story and tell you what's actually going on out there. So welcome, Nick, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Maxine. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. So this is nothing to do with property in this instance. It goes back to the beginning of the war, so early March, and Vanessa and I were talking about it, and we thought, no, we've got to go and do something here, whatever it might be, humanitarian aid. So I drove over to Poland to a town called Przemyśl, which has the border to Medzica, which is the border that everyone used to see on the telly. And Vanessa stayed at home, sort of mission control, and sort of dealt with the charity pays that we had at that time. And so I did. I set off, and then 2 days later I turned up, and I started to document what I saw, and it was like -5, and it was harrowing to see all these people coming across, and harrowing also to see the animals coming across as well. And it really was bad. It was like scary bad that you have to experience this stuff, and I think probably a good experience to have in that respect for me. Sobering, it brings you back down to earth, really. So I did my thing. I had a car, a pickup truck full of stuff, and a trailer, and dropped it all off, and hung around, did whatever I could, helped here, helped there, and then I'd only planned to be there for a couple of days, through a week at the most, there and back, and so I was on my way back, and Vanessa phoned me and told me about she'd been contacted by an NGO to put the shout out that there was a place in Przemyśl, which is where I was, a clinic, a veterinary clinic called the Ada Foundation, that were desperate for cat food and dog food and collars and leashes and bowls and blankets and cages and this, that and the other, because of the vast amount of refugee animals. I mean, people, when I include myself in this, when anyone says to me refugee, I immediately think of people, which is fine. It was totally understandable. But realistically, the animals, they're refugees too. So they've got all these refugee animals coming across, and they needed some food. So I thought, okay, we've got to do something about this. So we raised a few £1,000s. I think at that point we had about £5,000 in kitty from some lovely people who donated to us. So I went to Dresden because I couldn't find the volume in Poland. So I ended up going to Dresden, Germany, just across the border, filled up the van, filled up the trailer again, came back over to Poland and dropped it off. And then met the guys at the Ada Foundation in Przemyśl, and basically I didn't come back for about 7 weeks. That was the first stint over there. And in those 7 weeks, we were going across the border into Ukraine pretty much every few days. We were taking 3 vans, it was convoys, so we were taking 3 vans of food out there, so I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 tons of food out there. We were coming back with at least 15 dogs, or should we say 15 animals per van. So it accumulated, roughly speaking, quite a bit. So in that time, it was about 200 dogs and 89 cats were brought across. There were some exotic animals that came across as well. I have to say that I wasn't party to that, but there were some exotic animals that came across too. So in total, we did a lot in that time. And in that time, I was on TV. I was on This Morning. That's the one with Philip Schofield, I believe. Yes, I was on that one, and the BBC and stuff like that, and some newspapers. So that was fantastic coverage, because then we raised from about, at that moment in time, from £5,000 to £130,000 in that short space of time. And it was, to the people out there that had done this, it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, really, really fantastic. So what we did with that is we bought another ambulance for the Ada Foundation, another veterinary ambulance, and we built 2 new shelters, and we extended 2 shelters. So one of them in a place called Jola Vista was a dog kennel. We bought a hectare of land next to it and fenced it off and put some shelters on that. So we now extended that so they can put a lot more animals in there. And that's basically, at that moment in time, it naturally came to an end. That section of it came to an end because Poland shut the borders and Romania shut the borders. No animals coming across. So I came home at that point, but then kept going back because obviously if you can't get the animals across, they still need feeding.
Yes.
So I sort of went over there and kept them fed. Really, we still had food that we could use and take from the warehouses in Poland across and to the sort of Lviv area where we knew there's some shelters to be. But at the time it was, and as that was, we roll forward now to what month are we in? July now. So I'm now working. I've progressively gone east as this time's gone on, and seen some very, very terrible things that have happened, obviously to the people, but obviously in this instance to the animals as well. There was one shelter we came across near Kyiv that had been bombed 5 times, and they lost 500 dogs and 300 cats in that time, and it was just horrific because, to be honest with you, there's nothing there. It's literally just a shelter. There's no villages, there's no industry, there's no nothing. It's in the middle of agricultural fields in a copse of trees, and yet they bombed it 5 times. And you really have to scratch your head and go, why did you do that? So we come across some horrific things, but we can only fix what's there. So we fix it, we try and help out with the rebuilds, and we leave the food there for them. We came across a lovely lady in Kyiv, in Bucha. Bucha, if you remember, was where the massacres happened, where the Russian occupiers massacred a lot of, certainly the men folk there, but it didn't stop at them. It was a lot of children and women too, as well as the animals. She was a vet. Her name was Maria, lovely Maria. She stayed there because she was the only medic. Well, everyone was bugged out, they're gone. And because she was a vet, she had her own patients, animals. She was also feeding the local street dogs, but she was also helping anyone who got shot there as well, because she was literally the only medic. There was a story about the infamous Bucha sniper, which I think was on the BBC, and her friend was killed by the sniper. She was out walking. They had these white bands around their arms, which basically says, "I'm a civilian, don't shoot me." But he didn't ignore that, and he shot her. So her friend got shot in the head. And Maria was out one night feeding the street dogs, and she looked up, and the sniper had her in his sights. So she took her backpack off and opened it up. I don't know why, quite frankly. And then she shut her eyes and counted to 16. I don't know why 16 is an arbitrary number, but he didn't shoot. So, but these are the tales of what's been going on there. Yeah. They shot her dog in the head because obviously they were being aggressive to her, so it was trying to defend her. And it's just terrible stories. But these are things that happen as you progressively get to the east. Now I work in, and this is kind of where we're going with today's conversation, really, because essentially I need everyone's help still, I'm afraid. Please. We're working currently out of Kharkiv, and so it's essentially north of the Donbass. So from the Donbass you've got Kharkiv, then it goes down to Donetsk and then Luhansk, and then it obviously will go around to Mariupol, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with the map now. But we're in the north, in the newly demilitarized areas to the east, about 20 kilometers away from Russia itself. We're working in the villages which are about 2 kilometers away from the front line, but essentially we're underneath the artillery. So you have to wear a helmet and the vest and stuff like that, but the artillery and the rockets go over your head, and occasionally the Arab ones do come in around the villages. You can literally drive in to the village past a house, and then you do your work for 4 or 5 hours, and you come out and that house is on fire, and you can't do anything about it because they have no water supplies. Well, they have artesian wells, but you can't get the water from the well to the house to try and put the fire out. So it's very, very bad. But you know, I can't tell you how appreciative the people are that they haven't been forgotten. Because I mean, it's not just me. There are small teams of people doing this all over the Donbass and the larger part of Ukraine. And I can swear, and I'm sure these people would back me up on this one. When you drive into a village that's never been, when they've never seen anyone but a Russian for the last 4 months, and they sort of wander out of the house in a daze because they really don't know what to do. You know, their back garden's been turned into a mortar pit where you can see where the mortars have dug into the ground every time they fire them, and the garages are full of boxes with empty crates of mortars and stuff like that. And the house next door has got holes in the roof where they missed and they just hit the roof instead. And they walk out in this daze, and then when they realise you're actually not there to harm them, you're there to help them the best way you can, they almost fall to pieces. And you know what? And the thing is, though, they also want certainly us, myself, and everyone, you know, the guys that I work with. They want us to be witnesses to what they've seen and what they've been through.
It must be heartbreaking.
It is. It is heartbreaking. You do have to have moments when you have to go and sit on your own for a while, because you can get a bit too much after a while. But especially when you remember things that, you know, somebody said, or you hear a bang. You watch a dog running behind a tree, and then you hear a bang, and you just go. Because that's the other thing. The place is littered with mines, so you can't. If you're on the track, you've got to stay on the track, because even in the grass next, you can't go into it because you just don't know what's in there. And we had one story of one fella who his dog was limping, and we asked why is it limping, and it ran through a tripwire and set a hand grenade off, and then a piece of shrapnel went into its leg. This was in the early days of the war, and he had to operate on it himself because there's no vets clearly. At that moment in time, the dog's fine; it's okay now. But these are the stories you get. So we're going around these villages, and I can't tell you, they're extremely appreciative that we're there, we care, and the world is watching. Really, that's all they really care about. It's just that they're not alone. The people do care, and the people are aware that this is going on. And let's face it, it's not going to stop for a long time. I think we're kidding ourselves and think this is going to go away shortly. It's not. But we can't leave these people on their own. We just can't, because that would be just terrible. That would be just awful, an awful concept. Having to go through that and then just be forgotten. It's just not something that can't happen. So the mission now, and this is what largely I want everyone please to help me with, is that we need to raise £60,000. And the reason for that is purely that we need to rent a warehouse near Kharkiv and fill it and stockpile it for the winter. Because at the moment it's about 30. You think the weather here is hot today, it's about the same when it's over there permanently. But within by October, November, it's going to be -20. It's going to be brutal, utterly brutal. They've got no electricity, they've got no gas, they've got very little access to. They've got no money, got no cars, because the Russians stole all the cars. They've got no way of getting about. You find the cars with Zs on the bonnet, blown up where idiots driven across a mine. Yeah, and so what we need is the £50,000 so we can stockpile this warehouse. Now, the idea is that, and if everyone can help me, and Maxine, I know you're going to help me with this as well, that if everyone in the PRS can if everyone just stuffs in whatever they can, 500 quid, £1,000, £2,000, collectively we can do this. Between the whole of the PRS, all the letting agents in this country, all the financial institutions in the country, the insurance companies in this country, everyone within the PRS, we can do this. It's a simple little fix where I can actually go and instigate this and make sure that these people don't suffer. We can't fix the whole of the Donbass. There are other teams of people that are going to have to do that section, but this section we can do. We can make this happen. And if anybody does this for me, I can report back to you now that every single penny will go to the animal. There are no wages going on here. There's no salaries being taken. This is solely for the animals. And obviously I will report back through any media that I can, photographs and video of what we're doing, who we're giving the food out to and who we're rescuing at the time, and all the animals that we're bringing out as well.
I think that is such an important thing. You know, it's like the money is literally, every penny is going to be going straight to the charity to make sure that these animals and the people that are also there looking after these animals are going to be cared for. As Nick said, you know, this isn't going to go away anytime soon. So I think if we can get together collectively and try to help, Nick literally is risking his life every time he goes out there. I think it's a really brave thing that you're doing. And I think that this is, you know, you're probably making so much difference to so many people's lives that can't get out of the country, that are stuck there. So, you know, for us, certainly, we will put a link down below on this video to make sure that you can know exactly where you can send your money to the charity. But thank you, Nick. Thank you so much for actually sharing those experiences. And thank you for all that you're doing for those people. It's a horrible situation, and nobody would ever want to be in that situation. No. So I think what you're doing is fantastic. So thank you for, you know, everything that you're doing for the people and also for the animals.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jordan.